Then God said, I am the Lord your God. I led you out of the land of Egypt where you were slaves. These are the commands I give you. You must not worship any other gods except me. You must not make any idols. Don't make any statues or pictures of anything up in the sky, or of anything on the earth, or of anything down in the water. Don't worship or serve idols of any kind, because I, the Lord, am your God. I hate my people worshiping other gods. People who sin against me become my enemies, and I will punish them. And I will punish their children, their grandchildren, and even their great-grandchildren. But I will be very kind to people who love me and obey my commands. I will be kind to their families for thousands of generations. You must not use the name of the Lord your God to make empty promises. If you do, the Lord will not let you go unpunished. You must remember to keep the Sabbath a special day. You may work 6 days a week to do your job. But the seventh day is a day of rest in honor of the Lord your God. So on that day no one should work, not you, your sons and daughters, or your men and women slaves. Even your animals and the foreigners living in your cities must not work. That is because the Lord worked 6 days and made the sky, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. And on the seventh day he rested. In this way the Lord blessed the Sabbath, the day of rest. He made that a very special day. You must honor and respect your father and your mother. Do this so that you will have a full life in the land that the Lord your God gives you. You must not murder anyone. You must not commit adultery. You must not steal anything. You must not tell lies about other people. You must not want to take your neighbor's house. You must not want his wife, and you must not want his men and women servants, or his cattle, or his donkeys. You must not want to take anything that belongs to another person. During all this time the people in the valley heard the thundering and saw the lightning on the mountain. They saw smoke rising from the mountain and heard the sound of the trumpet. They were afraid and shook with fear. They stood away from the mountain and watched. Then the people said to Moses, If you want to speak to us, then we will listen. But please don't let God speak to us. If this happens, we will die. Then Moses said to them, Don't be afraid. God has come to test you. He wants you to respect him so that you will not sin. The people stood far away from the mountain while Moses went to the dark cloud where God was. Then the Lord told Moses to say this to the Israelites. You people have seen that I talked with you from heaven. So you must not make idols using gold or silver to compete with me. You must not make these false gods. Make a special altar for me. You should use dirt to make this altar. Offer sheep and cattle as burnt offerings and fellowship offerings on this altar. Do this in every place where I tell you to remember me. Then I will come and bless you. But if you use stones to make an altar, then don't use stones that were cut with an iron tool. If you do that, it will make the altar unacceptable. And you must not make steps leading up to the altar. If there are steps, when people look up to the altar, they will be able to see under your clothes. Then God said to Moses, These are the other laws that you will give to the people. If you buy a Hebrew slave, then that slave will serve for only 6 years. After 6 years he will be free, and he will have to pay nothing. If he is not married when he becomes your slave, when he becomes free, he will leave without a wife. But if the man is married when he becomes your slave, then he will keep his wife at the time he is made free. If the slave is not married, the master can give him a wife. If that wife gives birth to sons or daughters, she and her children will belong to the master. After the slave is finished with his years of service, he will be made free. But if the slave decides that he wants to stay with the master, he must say, "I love my master. I love my wife and my children. I will not become free. I will stay." If this happens, the master will bring the slave before God. The master will take the slave to a door or the wooden frame around the door and pierce the slave's ear using a sharp tool to show that the slave will serve that master for all his life. A man might decide to sell his daughter as a slave. If this happens, the rules for making her free are not the same as the rules for making the men slaves free. If the master who chose her for himself is not pleased with her, then he can sell the woman back to her father. If the master broke his promise to marry her, he loses the right to sell her to other people. If the master promised to let the slave woman marry his son, he must treat her like a daughter, not like a slave. If the master marries another woman, he must not give less food or clothing to the first wife, and he must continue to give her what she has a right to have in marriage. The man must do these 3 things for her. If he does not, the woman is made free, and it will cost her nothing. She owes no money to the man. Whoever hits and kills someone must be killed too. But if an accident happens, and a person kills someone without planning it, then God allowed that thing to happen. I will choose some special places where people can run to for safety, so that person can run to one of those places. But whoever plans to kill someone out of anger or hatred must be punished. Take them away from my altar and kill them. Whoever hits their father or their mother must be killed. Whoever steals someone to sell them as a slave or to keep them for their own slave must be killed. Whoever curses their father or mother must be killed. 2 men might argue, and one might hit the other with a rock or with his fist. If the man who was hurt is not killed, the man who hurt him should not be killed. If the man was hurt and must stay in bed for some time, the man who hurt him must support him. The man who hurt him must pay for the loss of his time. He must support him until he is completely healed. Sometimes people beat their slaves. If the slave dies after being beaten, the killer must be punished. But if the slave gets up after a few days, then the master will not be punished. That is because someone paid their money for the slave, and the slave belongs to them. 2 men might be fighting and hurt a pregnant woman. This might make the woman give birth to her baby before its time. If the woman was not hurt badly, the man who hurt her must pay a fine. The woman's husband will decide how much the man must pay. The judges will help the man decide how much the fine will be. But if the woman was hurt badly, then the man who hurt her must be punished. The punishment must fit the crime. You must trade one life for another life. You must trade an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a foot for a foot, a burn for a burn, a bruise for a bruise, a cut for a cut. If a man hits a slave in the eye and the slave is blinded in that eye, then the slave will be allowed to go free. His eye is the payment for his freedom. This is the same for a man or a woman slave. If a master hits his slave in the mouth and the slave loses a tooth, then the slave will be allowed to go free. The slave's tooth is payment for the slave's freedom. This is the same for a man or a woman slave. If a man's bull kills a man or a woman, then you should use stones and kill that bull. You should not eat the bull. The owner of the bull is not guilty. But if the bull had hurt people in the past, and if the owner was warned, then the owner is guilty. That is because he did not keep the bull tied or locked in its place. So if the bull is allowed to be free and kill someone, the owner is guilty. You should kill the bull with stones and also kill the owner. But the family of the dead man may accept money. If they accept money, the man who owned the bull should not be killed, but he must pay as much money as the judge decides. This same law must be followed if the bull kills someone's son or daughter. But if the bull kills a slave, the owner of the animal must pay the master 30 pieces of silver, and the bull must also be killed with stones. This law will be the same for men and women slaves. A man might take a cover off of a well or dig a hole and not cover it. If another man's animal comes and falls into the hole, the man who owns the hole is guilty. The man who owns the hole must pay for the animal, but after he pays for the animal, he will be allowed to keep the body of that animal. If one man's bull kills another man's bull, they should sell the bull that is alive. Both men will get half of the money that comes from selling the bull, and both men will also get half of the bull that was killed. But if a man's bull has hurt other animals in the past, that owner is responsible for his bull. If his bull kills another bull, he is guilty because he allowed the bull to be free. That man must pay bull for bull. He must trade his bull for the bull that was killed. How should you punish a man who steals a bull or a sheep? If the man kills the animal or sells it, then he cannot give it back. So he must pay 5 bulls for the one he stole, or he must pay 4 sheep for the one he stole. He must pay for stealing. If he owns nothing, then he will be sold as a slave. But if the man still has the animal and you find it, that man must give the owner 2 animals for every animal he stole. It doesn't matter if the animal was a bull, a donkey, or a sheep. If a thief is killed while trying to break into a house at night, then no one will be guilty for killing him. But if this happens during the day, the one who killed him will be guilty of murder. A man might let his animal loose to graze in his field or vineyard. If the animal wanders into another person's field or vineyard, then the owner must pay. The payment must come from the best of his crop. A man might start a fire to burn thorn bushes on his field. But if the fire grows and burns his neighbor's crops or the grain growing on the neighbor's field, the man who started the fire must pay for what he burned. Someone might give some money or tools to a neighbor for safekeeping. What should you do if someone steals those things from the neighbor's house? If you find the one who stole them, then that thief must pay twice as much as the things are worth. If you don't find the thief, then the owner of the house must go before the judges, who will decide if that person is guilty. What should you do if 2 men disagree about a bull or a donkey or sheep or clothing or something that is lost? One man says, "This is mine," and the other says, "No, it is mine." Both men should go before the judges, who will decide who is guilty. The one who was wrong must pay the other man twice as much as the thing is worth. A man might ask his neighbor to take care of an animal for a short time. It might be a donkey, a bull, or a sheep. But what should you do if that animal is hurt or dies, or someone takes the animal while no one is looking? That neighbor must explain that he did not steal the animal. If this is true, the neighbor will promise to the Lord that he did not steal it. The owner of the animal must accept this promise. The neighbor does not have to pay the owner for the animal. But if the neighbor stole the animal, then he must pay the owner for the animal. If wild animals killed the animal, then the neighbor should bring the body as proof. The neighbor will not have to pay the owner for the animal that was killed. If a man borrows an animal from his neighbor, and the animal is hurt or dies, then the neighbor must pay the owner for the animal. The neighbor is responsible because the owner was not there himself. But if the owner was there, then the neighbor does not have to pay. Or if the neighbor was paying money to use the animal for work, he will not have to pay if the animal dies or is hurt. The money he paid to use the animal will be enough payment.